Hello everyone and welcome to the 5-Minute German A2 course. In today's video, we will learn the concept of genitive. So genitive is a very important concept in German language and it is used a lot in writing. So you will see this concept frequently used in books, official documentation, as well as on TV such as advertisements and film titles. And there is also a high possibility that it also comes in the A2 exam. So it is possible that a question in the A2 exam uses the concept of genitive. That's why it is important for you to understand this concept, because if you don't understand this, then you will not understand what is being asked in the exam, and if you don't know what is being asked, you cannot answer it correctly. So that's why let's not waste any time and let's understand the concept of genitive and how it is used in German. So we will start by first of all taking a look at what is the genitive case in German. Then we will see when to use the genitive case. After that, we will take a look at the different articles in genitive. Then I will give you different examples of how genitive is used in a sentence, and I will also give you some examples which you might have seen in daily life. And then at the end, in the helpful tips section, I will tell you how you can identify genitive in a sentence. So what is the genitive case? So genitive is one of the 4 cases that we have in German language. These are nominative, accusative, dative, and genitive. And these different cases are used to identify the context in which a noun is used in a sentence. So for example, when we say that a noun is in nominative case, then this means that it is the subject. When it is in accusative, then it means that it is the object. And in case of dative, it means that the noun is an indirect object. And we have already done the nominative, accusative, and dative cases in A1. And since genitive is an A2 concept, that's why we will take a look at genitive right now. So when do we use the genitive case? So the genitive case is used to show possession or belonging and after specific prepositions such as während, wegen, trotz, and so on. But we will not take a look at the different prepositions in genitive in A2 because this is a B1 concept and we will do this later in the B1 course. So in this lesson, our focus will be on how we can use genitive to show possession or belonging, which is also the main use of genitive. Now if you remember, in the A1 course, we learned that we can show possession or belonging with the possessive article. For example, we have the sentence, das ist sein Auto, that is his car. Now in this sentence, sein is the possessive article which means his and shows possession. Let's take another example. So we have the sentence, das ist ihre Tasche, that is her bag. So over here, ihre is the possessive article which means her and shows possession. Let's take one more example. So we have the sentence, das sind seine Spielzeuge, which can be translated as those are its toys. So over here you see that seine is the possessive article. However, there is one problem in all of these sentences, and that is that when we use these sentences alone, then we don't know who is being referred or who is being talked about over here. And for this, we need some more information so that these sentences make more sense. Now let's add some more information so that we know who is being referred. So for the first sentence, I can write, das ist der Mann, that is the man. And then I can say, das ist sein Auto, that is his car. For the second case, since it is ihre, which means her, so I can say, das ist die Frau, that is the woman. And then, das ist ihre Tasche, that is her bag. For the third sentence, I can say, das ist das Kind, that is the child, das sind seine Spielzeuge, those are its toys. Now you see that all the sentences on the left side tell about the person. And when we use these before the sentences with possessive pronouns, then we know who is being referred or who is being talked about. And we can write these sentences together by connecting them with und as das ist der Mann und das ist sein Auto. That is the man and that is his car. Das ist die Frau und das ist ihre Tasche. that is the woman and that is her bag. And lastly, das ist das Kind und das sind seine Spielzeuge. That is the child and those are its toys. But if you take a look at these sentences, then you might notice that all of these sentences are too long. And this is not the best way to express possession. Now let's write these sentences in another way. And I will write them in English first so that you understand the concept. So the first sentence, which is, that is the man and that is his car. This can be written as, that is the car of the man. So you see that this sentence also shows possession, but it is written in a shorter way. For the second sentence, which is, that is the woman and that is her bag, I can write it as, that is the bag of the woman. So again you see that I have written the sentence in another way, but the meaning remains the same. And for the third sentence, which is, that is the child and those are its toys, I can write it as, those are the child's toys. Now you see that this also has the same meaning. And you see that the sentences on the right show a better and more efficient way to express possession or belonging. And these sentences that I have written on the right hand side are in the genitive case. So in simple terms, we can say that genitive is a better and efficient way to show possession as compared to possessive articles. Now let's take a look at the different articles in genitive, and then we will take a look at different examples. So here are the articles in nominative, accusative and dative, which we have already learned. Now let's make some space for the genitive case. So the bestimmter or definite article for genitive in masculine is des, for feminine it is der, for neutral it is des, and for plural it is der. Now let's take a look at the unbestimmte articles or indefinite articles in genitive. So the unbestimmte article for masculine in genitive is eines, for feminine it is einer, and for neutral it is eines. Now these articles in genitive can also be translated into English. So the translation of the genitive bestimmte articles in English will be of the. So an example can be, that is the car of the man. So you see, in place of the, we will use the genitive article. Similarly, the unbestimmte articles in genitive can be translated to of a. And an example can be, that is the car of a man. Now let's take a look at different examples with genitive. So we will first of all take a look at some examples with the masculine case. So we have the sentence, that is the car of the man. Now man is der Mann in German, so it is masculine. So this sentence in German will be, das ist das Auto des Mannes, which means that is the car of the man. So you see that we have used the genitive bestimmte article in masculine over here, which is des. Now the same sentence with an unbestimmte article in English is, that is the car of a man. So in German, we will write this as, das ist das Auto eines Mannes. That is the car of a man. So you see, we have used eines over here because this is the genitive unbestimmte article for masculine nouns. Now you might have noticed one difference over here, and that is that we have added the ending as after the noun man. And we have done this because whenever we have a masculine or neutral noun in genitive, then we will add the ending as or s after it. So since man is masculine, so it is der Mann, that's why I have added the endings as. Let's take another example. So I have the sentence, that is the car of the teacher. So teacher over here is a male teacher, which is der Lehrer. So this sentence will be written in German as, das ist das Auto des Lehrers. That is the car of the teacher. So you see, I have used des over here, which is the genitive bestimmte article for masculine, and I have also added the ending s over here, which is what I told you earlier, that for masculine and neutral nouns in genitive, we will add the ending as or s. Let's write the same sentence with an unbestimmte article. So it will be, that is the car of a teacher. And in German, this will be, das ist das Auto eines Lehrers. That is the car of a teacher. Again, you see, I have added the ending s. And don't worry, I will tell you for which nouns you have to add the ending as and for which you have to add the ending s in a moment. Now let's take a look at an example with the feminine noun. So I have the same sentence, this time with a woman instead of a man, which is that is the car of the woman. So woman in German is die Frau, and this sentence can be written in German as das ist das Auto der Frau. That is the car of the woman. So you see that we have used der over here because there is the Genitiv bestimmte article for feminine nouns. Now the same sentence with the unbestimmte article will be that is the car of a woman. So in German we will write this as das ist das Auto einer Frau. That is the car of a woman. So we have used einer over here because einer is the Genitiv unbestimmte article for feminine nouns. And you might have noticed that we have not added any endings over here after Frau as we did for Mann. And this is because for feminine and plural nouns in genitive, we don't add any ending. Now let's take a look at an example with the neutral case. So again, we have the same sentence, but this time with a child, because child is das Kind, so it is neutral in German. So we can write this sentence in German with the genitive case as das ist das Auto des Kindes. That is the car of the child. And with the unbestimmte article, the sentence will be that is the car of a child, and in German with the genitive case we will write it as das ist das Auto eines Kindes. That is the car of a child. And we have used des and eines over here because these are the genitive, bestimmte and unbestimmte articles for neutral nouns. And you see that we have added the ending as after the noun Kind over here as well. Now let's take a look at an example with the plural case. So in this case, we don't have any unbestimmte article. So a sentence with the bestimmte article will be that is the car of the guests, and guests is plural, so it is die Gäste in German. So the sentence with the genitive case will be written as das ist das Auto der Gäste. That is the car of the guests. So you see that we have used der over here, which is the genitive bestimmte article for plural nouns. And again, we don't have any ending after Gäste over here because, as I said earlier, for feminine and plural nouns in genitive, we don't have any ending. So here are all the different examples that we saw right now. And as I said earlier, that in case of masculine nouns in genitive, we have the ending as or s. In case of feminine nouns, we don't have any ending. In case of neutral nouns, we also have the ending as or s. And in case of plural, we don't have any ending. Now I know that you have the question in your mind that when do we use the ending as we saw in the example, das ist das Auto des Mannes, and when do we use the ending s as we saw in the example, das ist das Auto des Lehrers. So let me tell you when do we use as and when do we use s. So the ending as is used after nouns which have only one syllable, whereas the ending s is used after nouns with more than one syllable. Now let's understand this with a few examples. So we have the noun over here which is das Auto. Now the word auto is a noun which has two syllables. This is because when we pronounce it, then we pronounce it in two parts. The first is au and the second is to. So this is why it is a two-syllable word. And when it is used in genitive, it will have the ending s, so it will be des Autos. Similarly, the word Lehrer is also a noun which is composed of two syllables which are le and rer. So this will also have the ending s, so it will be des Lehrers. Now let me give you an example of a noun which has three syllables. So this noun is der Computer. So you see we pronounce it in three parts. And this will also have the ending s, so it will be des Computers. So these were examples of nouns with more than one syllable. Now an example of a noun with only one syllable is das Kind. So when we pronounce kind, then we only pronounce it in one go. We do not break it down into multiple parts. That's why it is a one syllable noun. And it will have the ending as. So it will be des Kindes in genitive. Another example is der Mann. This is also a one syllable noun. So it will also have the ending as. So it will be des Mannes. Another example is der Hund, which is also a one-syllable noun. So in genitive, it will be des Hundes. So you see that in case of one-syllable nouns, we will use the ending as. Now there is one more case where we will use the ending as, and that is for nouns with the endings s, set, x, and set. So an example will be der Bus. So this noun has the ending s. So in genitive, it will be des Busses. Another example is der Fuss, which has the ending set. So this will be des Fusses in genitive. Now one thing to remember over here is that these rules which I have given you are general rules which work in most of the cases. However, you must keep in mind that there can be exceptions which do not follow these rules. So those you have to then memorize. So these were the different noun endings in genitive. Now let's take a look at some more examples with genitive, and we will first of all take a look at a few examples with masculine nouns. So an example sentence with a masculine noun in genitive can be Der Vater des Mannes ist alt. The father of the man is old. So you see that we have used des over here, which is the genitive bestimmte article for masculine, because Mann is der Mann. And you see that how the article des shows the belonging of the father to the man in this sentence. Now let's take a look at another example. So I have the sentence, Das Haus des Vaters ist groß. The house of the father is big. Now you see that Vater is der Vater. That's why I have used the article des over here, which is the genitive bestimmte article for masculine noun. And also you see that the article des shows the belonging or possession of the house to the father. Let's take a look at a few examples with feminine nouns. So I have the sentence, Das Handy der Frau ist teuer. The mobile of the woman is expensive. And we know that Frau is die Frau. That's why we have used the article der over here, which is the genitive bestimmte article for feminine nouns. And you see that by using the genitive case over here, we show that the mobile belongs to the woman. Now another example can be, Die Meinung der Lehrerin ist wichtig. The opinion of the female teacher is important. And we know that Lehrerin is die Lehrerin in German, so it is a feminine noun. That's why we have used der over here. And you see from this example that we can also show possession or belonging of non-physical objects such as Meinung, which is opinion, using genitive as well. Now let's take a look at a few examples with neutral nouns. So I have the sentence, Die Farbe des Autos ist rot. The color of the car is red. And since Auto is das Auto, that's why we have used des over here. And the ending s because Auto is a two-syllable noun. Let's take another example. So I have the sentence, Die Klimaanlage des Hauses ist kaputt. The air conditioning of the house is broken. And house is das Haus, that's why we have used des. Now let's take a look at an example with the plural noun. So I have the sentence, Die Spielsachen der Kinder liegen überall. The toys of the children are everywhere. And we know that Kinder is die Kinder, that's why we have used der over here, which is the genitive bestimmte article for plural case. And this shows that the toys belong to the children. Now let's take a look at a few examples from daily life. And I am sure that you will find these very interesting. Now there is a very popular Netflix series which is called Money Heist. So it is a Spanish series, but in English it is called Money Heist. Now do you know what this series is called in German? So in German, this series is called Haus des Geldes, which can be translated to House of Money. And you see that they have used the genitive over here, which is des. This is because Geld is das Geld. So it is neutral, and we know that the genitive bestimmte article for neutral is des. And they have also added the ending as because Geld is a one-syllable noun. Another very famous film that you might know is The Lord of the Rings. So this is the title in English, and the title for The Lord of the Rings in German is Der Herr der Ringe. So you see that they have again used the genitive over here, which is there. And this is because ringe is the ringe. So it is a plural. So you will see the genitive in daily life in different commercials, taglines, and movie titles. So if you know the concept of genitive, then you will have no problem in understanding what the title of a movie or series means when you see it in German. So these were different examples with the genitive case. Now let me give you another way on how you can translate a genitive sentence in English. So we have the sentence, "Das ist das Auto des Mannes." And up till now, I have translated this sentence in English as "that is the car of the man." So I have translated this as "of the." I use this translation because I personally feel that this is simpler and easier to translate from German into English. However, we can also translate this sentence in another way, and that translation is "that is the man's car." So you see that instead of using "of the," I have used an apostrophe with S after it. And in one case, I feel that it is better to use this translation. And that is when we use genitive with names. So we saw an example earlier, which was "Der Vater des Mannes ist alt." The father of the man is old. Now suppose that der Mann, who is being mentioned over here, has a name, and his name is Peter. Then the sentence, when written with a name in German, will be Peters Vater ist alt, which means Peter's father is old. So you see that we only add an S after the name, and the rest of the structure is similar to as we write it in English. Now another example which we saw earlier was "Das ist das Auto der Frau." That is the car of the woman. Now if the name of the Frau was Anna, then we will write this sentence in genitive as "Das ist Annas Auto," which means that is Anna's car. So you see again we have added an S after the name without any apostrophe as we do it in English. Now let's take one more example. So we have the sentence "Das ist das Auto des Kindes." That is the car of the child. Now suppose that the name of das Kind was Thomas. Then in this case we will write the sentence in genitive as "Das ist Thomas' Auto," which can be translated as "that is Thomas's car." So in this case you see that we have only added an apostrophe at the end because the name already ends with an S. So it does not make sense to add another S after it. So in English we do add another S, but in German we don't add an extra S and we only add an apostrophe. And we don't have to pronounce the apostrophe as well. So let me explain this a little more. So whenever we use the genitive with names and the name has the ending S as set, X or Z, then we will only add an apostrophe, which is this high comma at the end. So that's why Thomas in genitive will be Thomas with an apostrophe at the end, and it will be pronounced simply as Thomas. If we have the name Max, then it will be Max with an apostrophe at the end. And the name Moritz, which ends with an Z, will also have an apostrophe at the end to show possession. And with all the other endings that we have, we will add S at the end. So for example, the name Peter in genitive will be Peters. Anna will be Annas. And Frank, which has the ending Ka, will be Franks. So this is something that you have to keep in mind. And this is why I gave you the second translation as well, because this is easier to use with names. However, at the end, it is your choice. Whichever translation you find easier, you can use it, as both have the same meaning. Now let's see what kind of questions can we answer with genitive. So as we learned earlier that the genitive is used to show possession or belonging. And the genitive answers the question of whose, which is an English word. So for example, if somebody asks the question, "Whose car is that?" then we can answer it with the genitive as "Das ist das Auto des Mannes." That is the car of the man. And for whose, we have the German word which is wessen. So this is a W-Frage, which means whose. So we can write the question whose car is that in German as Wessen Auto ist das? Whose car is that? And we can answer it by saying das ist das Auto des Mannes. Let's take another example with the W-Frage wessen. So we have the question Wessen Tasche ist das? Whose bag is that? And we can answer this with the genitive as well by saying das ist die Tasche der Frau. That is the bag of the woman. So whenever you have a question with the W-Frage wessen, you can use the genitive to answer it. Now I know that genitive is a new concept and many students find it confusing. However, there is also an alternative to the genitive with which you can make the same sentences. And that is the preposition von, which is a dative preposition, which we already learned. So as you see over here, von has two translations in English. The first is from and the second is of. So whenever we want to show possession, then we will use the translation of. Now let's do a comparison of a sentence written in genitive and with the preposition von. So in genitive, we have the sentence Das ist das Auto des Mannes, which means that is the car of the man. Now we can write the same sentence with von as Das ist das Auto von dem Mann, which also has the same meaning, which is that is the car of the man. The only difference is that when we use von, then there is no ending after the noun, as we do it in case of genitive. And you know, we can also write this sentence as Das ist das Auto vom Mann, because vom is a combination of von and dem. Now let's take a look at some more examples. So we saw the sentence Das ist das Auto der Frau in genitive. So this can be written with von as Das ist das Auto von der Frau, which also means that is the car of the woman. So we have used der over here because there is the bestimmte article in dative for feminine nouns. And both of these sentences have the same meaning. Another example can be Der Vater des Kindes ist alt. The father of the child is old. And this can be written with von as Der Vater von dem Kind ist alt, which also has the same meaning. And a sentence with the name which we saw was Das ist Thomas Auto. This can be written with von as Das ist das Auto von Thomas. And both of them also have the same meaning. So from the exam point of view, it is important that you understand the genitive and are able to identify when the genitive is used in a question so that you can understand it properly. But if you have any problems using the genitive in a sentence, for example in writing, then my suggestion would be that you use von because it is easier, and by using von you have a less chance of making a mistake. So now let me give you some tips on how you can identify the genitive. So the first tip to identify the genitive in a sentence is that the articles des or eines are always genitive. And these are the bestimmte and unbestimmte articles for masculine and neutral nouns. So for example, if you see the sentence Das ist das Auto des Mannes, then since we have used the article des over here, so with this you can identify that this noun is in genitive. Similarly, in the sentence Das ist das Auto des Kindes, again you see that we have used des, so you can use this to identify the genitive. An example with the unbestimmte article which we saw was Das ist das Auto eines Mannes. So over here, since we have used eines, so with this you can identify that this is the genitive. And similarly, for neutral nouns, we again use eines, so das ist das Auto eines Kindes. So this can help you to identify the genitive case. So whenever you see des or eines in a sentence, then you can use it to identify the genitive case. But this is only used for masculine and neutral nouns. What about feminine and plural nouns? So for this, my tip is that if two nouns with articles come together without a connector or comma, then the second noun is usually in genitive. So I know that this was a long sentence, so let me explain this with an example. So I have the sentence Die Farbe der Sonne ist gelb. Now in this sentence, die Farbe is noun 1, and then immediately after it we have der Sonne, which is also a noun. So it is noun number 2. And there is no comma or connector such as und, oder, etc. between them. So that's why the second noun, which is der Sonne, will be in genitive. And in German, Sonne is die Sonne. So you see over here we have used the genitive bestimmte article for feminine nouns. So this sentence can be translated as the color of the sun is yellow. Let's take another example. So I have the sentence, das Auto der Gäste ist neu. Now over here again you see that we have noun 1, which is das Auto. After that we don't have any comma or connector, and we immediately have the second noun, which is der Gäste. So this shows that the second noun, which is der Gäste, is in genitive. And this sentence means the car of the guests is new. So using these tips, you can identify the genitive in a sentence. And this is important for you because in the A2 exam, it is possible that they use the genitive in the question. So if you know how to identify the genitive case, then you will be able to understand the question properly and also answer it. So keep these tips in mind so that you don't make a mistake in the exam. And with this, we come to the end of the lesson. So well done and great work. I know that this was a new concept, but if you practice this a little bit, then you will understand this better and it will become easier for you. So I hope that this video was helpful for you. If you have any questions or feedback, please let me know in the comments below. Thank you very much for your time, and we will see each other in the next video.